The Idris Shah Foundation presents Destination Mecca by Idris Shah. First published 1964, published in this edition 2016. This audiobook is narrated by David Ault. Seek not our resting place upon this earth, but find it in the hearts of men. Rumi. Chapter 1. Gentlemen at Large. October in London. Away beyond the club's terrace, a handful of embankment tramps crouched under the bare trees. I stood by the reassuring radiator and watched them, oddly contrasting with the inhabitants of my little world. Was their life, huddled on a public bench, panning out as they wished it, as they had thought it would? Was mine, sprawling in a cosy smoking room, any more productive? I was not sure that either thought mattered so very much, anyway. Over in the corner, some threadbare diehards of club life smoked and muttered over their leisurely pints. Suave, smooth waiters, smiling, hovering, well-groomed, gave our artificial community a superficial air of well-being that I knew from protracted observation to be purposelessly assumed. Every one of the obsequious servants had in reality more spare cash than the spending money that club life allowed many hard-pressed members, up to their ears in debt. Clubland was doomed in a day when most people outside these walls thought that a club was a place where one danced until the early hours of the morning. Keeping up with the Joneses was about all that was left. We were a survival from another time. At least our embankment neighbours had perhaps come to terms with life. We had not. What was I? A writer, a traveller, and an outlaw in a sense. It seemed funny how names, labels, associations of ideas, shadows without substance, could capture and influence men's minds, even today. Even today, when colourlessness was the rule. A writer, say, is respectable. Even if he is almost antisocial, he can be called bohemian. He is a creative worker, or is supposed to be. That is enough. People must have labels. The scramble is to get the right one, and then to hold on to it. Writers and travellers are knowledgeable men, people to be reckoned with. Thus runs the general impression. A refugee, on the other hand, is something not very nice. He does not fit into any pattern. A refugee writer? Nothing at all. The adjective then swallows the noun. Was one an exile then, or an émigré? I had left certain things behind in the East, and had in turn collected others in the West. Meantime, the tide of life and of events had passed on. Other times, other ways still clung to the mind, a trap for the unwary, like long ceremonial swords that look well, but are a curse to wear. Introspection can go too far, and you do not need me to tell you that. Little more than 4 years before, I had had all I wanted in a material sense. What exile, though, does not say that he was once rich? This case parallels that of the modern reincarnationists, who seem able to identify former celebrities reborn far more easily than humbler folk. I had to find myself, to come to some sort of terms with the world. If tramps could do so, surely I, a sort of wanderer too, could do the same. Noblesse oblige is a delicious fantasy. It does not fill the stomach or really quieten the conscience. Out of a maze of fogged ideas, salient points began to emerge. I had written a good deal, mostly for my own enjoyment. Much of it, too, had been published, and I was now living on that former hobby in deadly earnest. I could not say that I was enjoying the experience, for I did not regard myself as a creative worker. I could not, that is, weave beauty, or anything else, out of mere words and sell them as literature. I would have to sell what I could, where I could, regardless of any budding talents, irrespective of anything but that check. Surprisingly, I seemed to have no grudge against life. My entire thoughts were turned towards action. I had to get out of this environment, no doubt about that. Clubs and social life seemed to be for those who earned them, or who did not need to earn at all. I went upstairs to my bedroom, high above the river. On a chair was my suitcase, and I turned out its remaining contents: a world map, some stones picked up in South America because they seemed to be of interesting shapes and colours, and a camera, Robot f2.8. I unfolded the map on the floor, placed 4 stones on Asia and Africa, and made my plan. I had been trying to get some newspaper interested in sponsoring me for a trek through unknown Arabia and Africa. If I went and returned on my own resources, they would always be glad to see the material. There are always, it seems, dozens of tiresome young men going about London trying to get people interested in things. I looked at the stones and the places they marked: Mecca, stronghold of Islam, city forbidden to non-Muslims, goal of every Muslim pilgrim. To visit the shrine here is the duty of all who follow the teachings of Muhammad. Sudan, land of the dreaded Mahdi, of the twin Niles, Juju, and the mines of Solomon. Afghanistan, country of my grandsires, beyond whose southern border lay the unmapped mountain realm of the firebrand Fakir of Ipi, ruler of 3 million warrior Pathans. And Petra, a city hewn in prehistoric days from the rose-red living rock, rumoured cache of a treasure greater even than that of Solomon, son of David, commander of the Jinn. There were 7 stones. The last 3 I placed on Syria and Lebanon and Cyprus, the home of Venus. That was my way. Travel, adventure, material for writings, some measure of oblivion and a taste of the East again, even for a year or so. I rang up an old friend. Thinking of going to Saudi Arabia? The king has invited you, of course. No? What are your plans then? Oh, my dear fellow, you can't just walk, you know. Best of luck anyway. I picked up Robot 2.8, weighed it in my hand. The day before, I had been told that there was a lift going on an ex-naval surplus boat. Delivery Tangier, old boy, piece of cake. Care to come along? When I was planning my eastern journey in England and talking to kindred spirits about the idea of seeking out unusual places and writing about them, one thing seemed to be on everyone's lips. Old Tony? No, he isn't around anymore. Made his pile in Tangier, they say. George? Saw him down in Cornwall, tinkering about with boats. Funny thing, but he seems to have taken up yachting in a big way. Was fitting out 3 ex-naval jobs there. I suppose he's got customers for them. Freddie? Yes, I got a picture card from him, postmarked Canaries of all places. Said he was just cruising with a few friends. Tommy? Don't you know, he got a year for smuggling cigarettes from Tangier to Spain. Used to take them to the Canaries too, in a fast war surplus subchaser or something. Rotten luck, don't you think? Pictures and material on smuggling from Tangier, that was an angle. I set about collecting information. Nobody wanted to talk much, but an old school friend told me that since the war, most of the brighter sparks had hightailed it for the Mediterranean, where fortunes were to be made. Guns for the Jews and Arabs, old boy, then refugees out of India and Pakistan, then cigarettes and nylons into Europe from Tangier. Tangier is the place. Or Villefranche in France. But I could not get in touch with anyone who had actually been on the cigarette run across the Straits of Gibraltar. The nearest I got was slipping a fat tip to a barman in a small West End club, and being told to come back in a week. What I got in exchange was the only clue available, it seemed. It was a now tattered piece of paper, which is before me as I write. I have changed the names and jumbled all the details, of course. 1. J.M. claims to have had experience on a cigarette ship, B-class ML, and formerly war experience in the Indian Army. Present address unknown, but might be contacted through X Bank, Isle of Man. 2. G.S., formerly of St. Paul's House, Woffingham, Devon, now running Motor Yacht Boise, care of GPO Tangier. Has made several trips across the straits and is now selling boats to cigarette interests. While awaiting offers for the boats, which he equips and sails out to Tangier, carries out smuggling charters across the straits and possibly to the Canaries. A strange type of person. 3. E. Former shipmate of number 2 but fell out with him. Is now somewhere in England trying to raise capital to buy or charter a ship to use for cigarette work. Says he has not so far been able to get anyone to believe in the plan, or else they will not trust him with the £3,000 he needs, or maybe they have not got it. He mutinied against his captain once in the Straits. 4. D.W. went specially to the Mediterranean to study the question. This is his home address. Nobody knows where he is now. 5. J.P. He is a useful and ambitious man and is trying to break with number 2, for whom he is a crewman. Keeps his eyes open and should make good soon. Present whereabouts, probably with number 2 above in the Mediterranean, suggests that you look for further information in Tangier. There was no reply from the various smugglers to whom I wrote as a result of this information. But somehow the word had got round that my knowledge of languages might be useful in the area. Delivery Tangier, old boy, piece of cake. Care to come along? 24 hours later, I was heading towards the Thames estuary in Jemima, the 70-foot ex-naval craft that Aubrey was taking out to the smuggling field. Fate, I exulted, seemed to have taken a hand. I had not been forced to part with Robot 2.8, which I needed for photos, and I was on my way to the east. Mecca, here I come, even if I have to walk all the way once I get on eastern soil.